What if I told you that Prince William actually contacted the police after something utterly astonishing was discovered inside Queen Camilla's wardrobe? This isn't just a rumor or some far-fetched online theory. It's a story that has already set the world ablaze with speculation, intrigue, and questions surrounding the very core of the royal family. Before we dive into this jaw-dropping mystery, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now. By subscribing, you'll always stay ahead of the curve when it comes to royal bombshells, hidden truths, and the secrets the palace would rather keep firmly behind closed doors. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next, because today's revelation is going to leave you absolutely speechless. So, let's start with the headline itself. William called the police on Camilla after this was discovered in her wardrobe. That's not an exaggeration, that's precisely what happened, at least according to accounts from inside Clarence House. During what was meant to be a routine inspection of the property, a standard check of the structure, fixtures, and safety measures, inspectors stumbled upon something that instantly turned the ordinary into the extraordinary. Behind one of the walls adjoining Camilla's private dressing area, they uncovered a hidden passage. At the end of that narrow corridor, tucked away in the darkness and dust, was a sealed chest that had clearly been placed there with deliberate care. And here's where it becomes genuinely disturbing. That chest wasn't some centuries-old relic from long-forgotten monarchs. No, it was relatively modern, marked with insignia directly linked to Queen Elizabeth II, and lined in such a way that it was obvious whoever hid it wanted to preserve its contents for decades. Think about that for a moment. A chest connected to the late Queen Elizabeth, concealed directly behind the walls of Camilla's bedroom. It doesn't take a detective to understand why William reacted the way he did. This was no mere curiosity. This was a discovery that practically screamed deliberate concealment. And when something like that is unearthed in such a private and sensitive space, it becomes impossible not to question what was inside, why it was hidden, and most crucially, who was responsible for placing it there. Now, we must pause for a moment and remember that Clarence House carries immense historical weight. This isn't just another royal residence. For generations, it has served as a home to royals who played vital roles in maintaining the monarchy's continuity. During World War II, whispers circulated about secret passages and reinforced sections concealed within the walls of London's royal properties. Clarence House was long rumored to hold such secrets: hidden rooms, escape routes, and secret chambers known only to a select few. For inspectors to stumble upon one of these hidden passages in the 21st century is already remarkable enough. But to then find a chest locked away and unmistakably linked to the late Queen adds an entirely new level of seriousness. The chest itself appeared to contain documents, papers stacked neatly and preserved with careful lining, protected from both damp and time. It wasn't jewels glimmering in the dark, nor a misplaced crown or priceless relic from centuries gone by. No, this was something far more intriguing: written material. Letters, ledgers, perhaps even private records that someone went to great lengths to conceal. And that someone clearly had access not only to Clarence House, but specifically to Camilla's private quarters. The implications of that alone are staggering. As word of the discovery spread through the palace's inner circle, panic quickly took hold. Advisors whispered anxiously about what the chest might contain. Could it be records of jewels that mysteriously vanished from royal ledgers years ago? Archivists have long noted gaps in the documentation of certain heirlooms, some connected to Princess Diana, others to Queen Elizabeth II herself. Could these documents be evidence that someone had hidden away treasures meant for safekeeping? Or worse, valuables that had been deliberately removed from circulation? No one knew for certain, but the suspicion alone was enough to cause alarm. This is where Prince William stepped in. Unlike others who were paralyzed by fear of what such a scandal could do to the monarchy, William insisted that the matter couldn't simply be brushed aside. He reportedly told those closest to him that this wasn't about violating Camilla's privacy or intruding upon her personal belongings. This was about legacy, about truth, and about safeguarding the memory of his grandmother, ensuring that nothing sacred to her reign was lost to secrecy. That conviction led him to do what no one expected. He called the police. Just imagine that moment for a second. The future king bypassing the carefully polished machinery of royal advisors, opting instead to bring in outside authorities. It was a bold decision, one that underscored just how seriously he viewed the matter. By involving the police, William wasn't merely addressing the mystery of the chest. He was sending a powerful message to everyone within the royal household. This was not a secret that would remain buried. It would be confronted openly and transparently, no matter whose feathers were ruffled. For Camilla, the discovery could not have come at a worse moment. Sources claim she denied any knowledge of the chest, dismissing it as something that must have predated her use of the room. Yet the defensive tone of her denial raised eyebrows. If she truly had no connection to it, why was the chest hidden in such close proximity to her private quarters? Why not in a cellar, an attic, or some long-forgotten storage space? The optics were dreadful. And in the world of royalty, optics can be just as damaging as facts. The moment word of the discovery leaked beyond palace walls, the situation exploded. What should have remained a tightly guarded palace secret instead spilled into headlines around the world. Within hours, hashtags like Camilla Chest and Royal Secrets began trending. Social media was soon flooded with memes, users posting mock images of secret passages and treasure chests hidden inside wardrobes. But beneath all the humor lay genuine intrigue. People wanted answers. What was inside that chest, and why was Camilla at the center of the storm? This was no longer a quiet family matter. It had transformed into a story that symbolized something far greater: secrecy versus transparency, shadow versus light, concealment versus truth. And William, by taking the bold step of involving the police, positioned himself firmly on the side of truth. That single act made him appear to many as the defender of his grandmother's legacy, the one royal prepared to risk everything to uphold what the monarchy is meant to represent. Meanwhile, Camilla found herself cast in an entirely different light, one of suspicion, secrecy, and shadows. And this, as many would soon realize, was only the beginning. What exactly was inside the chest? Why did William feel he had no choice but to escalate the matter? And how had this discovery already begun reshaping public perception of both William and Camilla? The answers to those questions would unfold in the days that followed, triggering fallout that no one inside the palace could have foreseen. When Prince William made the extraordinary decision to involve the police over the chest discovered in Camilla's wardrobe, the atmosphere within Clarence House shifted overnight, from quiet unease to full-blown crisis. What began as a routine inspection of the residence had now spiraled into one of the most sensational discoveries in modern royal history. Before I take you deeper into what happened next, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and have your notifications turned on. Stories like this one tend to unfold rapidly, and with every update comes another shocking twist you won't want to miss. Subscribing ensures you never fall behind on the revelations that continue to shake the very walls of the palace. The first concern was containment. Advisors scrambled to manage the situation, emphasizing the need for absolute discretion. They argued that if the police handled the chest too publicly, it would ignite an immediate media frenzy. But what those advisors failed to grasp was that the spark had already been lit. Word of the discovery was already seeping through the cracks, whispered among staff members and exchanged in hushed conversations between insiders. Secrets seldom remain sealed within palace walls. And this was no ordinary secret. The chest had become a living symbol of questions the monarchy had never wanted to confront. What else might be hidden? What else might be missing? And why did this discovery point so uncomfortably close to Queen Camilla herself? Once called in by William, the police approached the matter with the caution and gravity it demanded. They treated Clarence House as both a historic landmark and an active scene of investigation. Officers meticulously documented the wardrobe, the hidden passage, and the chest itself. Witnesses later described the surreal sight of uniformed officers inside Clarence House, quietly photographing a corridor no one had even known existed. For a residence so often portrayed as polished, dignified, and serene, the sudden intrusion of law enforcement shattered that illusion. Behind those stately walls, there was dust, darkness, and mystery. And William wanted answers. Camilla, meanwhile, was said to be deeply unsettled. She continued to deny any knowledge of the chest, repeating her claim that it must have been hidden long before she ever used the room. Yet her reaction betrayed unease. At public appearances soon after the story broke internally, she appeared distracted, tense, her usual composure visibly slipping. Observers described her expressions as strained, even defensive. In the royal world, body language can often speak louder than carefully chosen words. And in Camilla's case, it only intensified suspicions that she might be hiding more than she admitted. The chest itself remained sealed during those first tense days, as debates erupted over whether the police should open it immediately or whether palace archivists ought to examine and catalog its contents first. For William, the delay was intolerable. He had pushed for immediate action, arguing that every hour of hesitation only worsened the optics and created the impression of a cover-up. And he was right. By the time the decision was finally made to move forward, leaks had already reached the press, and the headlines exploded. Newspapers seized upon the story with a level of intensity not seen since the most turbulent days of royal scandal. "Secret chest found in Camilla's wardrobe," blared one tabloid. "Police called to Clarence House after shocking discovery," read another. Broadcasters scrambled to secure airtime, while social media went into complete overdrive. Within hours, hashtags like Camilla Chest and Royal Secrets were trending worldwide. Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok filled with speculation, memes, and wild theories. Some users joked about Narnia-like wardrobes concealing entire worlds, while others speculated about missing jewels, confidential letters, or even hidden diaries. What united them all was one shared feeling: that this was no trivial matter. It was a turning point. The narrative forming around William and Camilla was sharp and deeply polarizing. William was depicted as the protector, the royal who had finally taken a stand for transparency and the legacy of Queen Elizabeth II. His decisive action in calling the police made him appear principled, courageous, and determined not to let shadows linger over his grandmother's memory. By contrast, Camilla's position was cast in a completely different light. Whether fairly or not, she became a figure of suspicion, the one connected by proximity to the hidden chest, the one whose repeated denials did little to erase public doubt. For the people, perception is everything, and perception had already turned against her. Behind the scenes, King Charles faced his own private torment. Sources close to the palace whispered that he feared what might be discovered inside the chest. His concerns went beyond potential scandal. It was the dread of personal humiliation, of seeing his wife caught in such a damaging controversy. Ever cautious, Charles reportedly urged restraint, hoping the matter could be handled quietly, perhaps even internally. But William's boldness had already made that impossible. The die was cast. This was no longer a private family matter. It had become a question of public trust. Archivists brought in to assess the situation only added fuel to the fire. They noted that there had long been discrepancies within royal ledgers, records of heirlooms, jewels, and private correspondence that simply didn't add up. Some items linked to Princess Diana were missing, while others connected to Queen Elizabeth II had been recorded as unaccounted for. Could the chest hold the answers to those inconsistencies? Was this the missing link in decades of whispered speculation about treasures that had mysteriously vanished? If so, its discovery could either clear names or tarnish them forever. Meanwhile, the public devoured every detail with insatiable curiosity. Royal watchers dissected Camilla's every appearance, her expressions, her gestures, her body language. Videos analyzing her most recent outings garnered millions of views, while comment sections overflowed with speculation that bordered on obsession. For many, Camilla had become the embodiment of secrecy, the keeper of shadows. William, in contrast, was portrayed as the light, the one brave enough to cut through the darkness, no matter how unsettling the truth might be. The implications reached far beyond mere entertainment. This was about trust, about the institution itself, and the unsettling notion that the monarchy might still be harboring hidden caches of secrets waiting to emerge. And if one chest could be uncovered behind Camilla's wardrobe, how many more might be concealed within other royal residences? Were there more secret passages, hidden rooms, or sealed chests lined with documents and treasures too sensitive to ever be revealed? The discovery hadn't just cracked open a wall, it had shattered the very illusion of certainty surrounding royal history. For Camilla personally, the fallout was severe. Her approval ratings plummeted. Protests met her public appearances, and the strain became increasingly visible in her withdrawn demeanor. Advisors quietly began canceling engagements to prevent scenes that could spiral into public embarrassment. Retreating to Ray Mill House, she sought refuge from the storm. But her withdrawal only ignited further speculation. If she truly had nothing to conceal, critics demanded, why retreat? Why not face the tempest head-on? Meanwhile, William's public stature soared. He was celebrated as the royal prepared to act decisively, the one who refused to let secrecy tarnish the family's legacy. To him, the chest was not merely a curiosity. It marked a clear line in the sand. By standing firmly on the side of transparency, he reshaped how the public perceived him. In their eyes, he was no longer just the heir waiting for his time. He was already stepping into the role of protector, the guardian of the monarchy's future. And yet, despite all the swirling drama, one question loomed above them all. What exactly lay inside the chest? Rumors circulated. Missing jewels, handwritten letters, perhaps even confessions that were never meant to be seen. The truth, when finally revealed, would either vindicate William's boldness or affirm the darker suspicions surrounding Camilla. That revelation was drawing near. But even before it came, the discovery itself had already shifted the balance of power, trust, and perception within the royal family. The chest had become far more than an object. It was a symbol of concealed truths, of demanded transparency, and of the ever-present tension between shadow and revelation that defines the monarchy itself. Then, the moment of truth arrived. After days of fierce debate, relentless speculation, and growing public pressure, the sealed chest found in Queen Camilla's wardrobe was finally opened. It was a scene those present would never forget. Uniformed officers, palace archivists, and carefully selected witnesses assembled in a stark, private chamber inside Clarence House. The chest rested in the center, its surface layered with the dust of decades, its lock resisting until forced open with deliberate care. And as the lid creaked upward, the secrets long buried in darkness finally spilled into the light. But before I reveal what was uncovered, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. The revelations inside the chest are so extraordinary that they deserve to be heard in full, and you'll want to stay with us through every turn in this unfolding story. Subscribing ensures you won't miss a single update as this remarkable saga continues. Inside, the chest lay meticulously arranged stacks of documents, bundles of letters tied with twine and folders sealed within protective sleeves. There were no glittering diamonds or dazzling tiaras, at least not at first glance. What met the eye was paper, hundreds, perhaps thousands of sheets, neatly preserved and organized with unsettling precision. To the untrained observer, it might have appeared ordinary, but to the archivists and officers present, the significance of what they were handling was instantly apparent. These were no random scraps. They were records, ledgers, and private correspondences directly linked to the late Queen Elizabeth. The insignia stamped across the folders confirmed what had only been speculated until then. This chest had not been placed there by accident. It had been deliberately stored, either to safeguard or to conceal some of the monarchy's most sensitive material. Letters bearing the Queen's insignia, notes marked confidential, and documents tracking heirlooms long presumed missing were among the first to be catalogued. To some, it felt like opening a time capsule. To others, it was more akin to unveiling a vault of incriminating evidence. The most startling discovery came in the form of discrepancies within the jewel records. Archivists had long murmured about certain missing pieces, heirlooms that had vanished from official ledgers without explanation, including items once linked to both Elizabeth II and Princess Diana. Here, within the hidden wall of Camilla's wardrobe, were documents that alluded directly to those very absences. Not only were lists of jewels included, but handwritten notes in the margins hinted at movements, transfers, and even sudden removals from the royal collection. Whether these annotations were the Queen's own reminders or the work of another hand remained uncertain, but their very presence was astounding. Among the bundles of letters, speculation mounted that some were intensely personal, perhaps exchanges between Elizabeth II and trusted confidants, or reflective writings never intended to be read beyond her lifetime. For William, these letters were sacred, a tangible link to his grandmother, a monarch whose reign defined an era and whose memory he was determined to protect. For Camilla, however, their presence behind her wardrobe wall was nothing short of catastrophic. As the contents of the chest inevitably began to seep into the press, the world reacted with a blend of fascination and outrage. Reports described the discovery as everything from a hidden royal archive to the monarchy's very own Pandora's box. The notion that sensitive royal documents, potentially including records of missing heirlooms, had been secreted away in such a concealed location was almost too astonishing to believe. And yet the evidence was irrefutable. The chest was real. The papers were real. And their implications were monumental. Camilla's denials grew louder, but they were quickly drowned out by the roar of public opinion. How could she possibly have been unaware of such a chest hidden behind her own wardrobe wall? even if she truly had no part in its concealment. The optics were disastrous. Critics painted her as the keeper of shadows, the woman beneath whose roof the monarchy's secrets had been buried. It didn't matter whether she was guilty or innocent. Perception alone was enough to erode her standing almost overnight. For William, however, this was vindication. By calling in the police and demanding transparency, he positioned himself as the guardian of the royal legacy. To the public, it seemed he had fought not merely for his grandmother's memory, but for the greater principle that truth must triumph over secrecy. His reputation soared. Media outlets hailed his decisiveness, portraying him as the modern embodiment of monarchy, a man unafraid to act, even at the risk of scandal. Within the palace, however, chaos reigned. Advisors scrambled to limit the fallout, working tirelessly to draft statements that downplayed the discovery while still acknowledging the need for further inquiry. But the truth could not be contained. Each new leak sparked another wave of headlines, each one more sensational than the last. Online, theories multiplied. Some believed the chest contained proof of missing royal jewels worth millions, while others speculated it held letters exposing long-buried personal rifts within the family. Whatever the truth, the chest had already evolved from a concealed artifact into a global emblem of secrecy. Meanwhile, protests outside royal engagements grew increasingly fierce. Demonstrators waved placards demanding transparency, some mocking Camilla with taunting slogans about wardrobe secrets and hidden treasures. Public confidence in her plummeted, and her appearances became laden with tension. Advisors canceled several of her scheduled outings, officially citing logistical difficulties, though insiders quietly admitted the true reason: to spare her further embarrassment. Every appearance risked confrontation, and every silence invited deeper suspicion. Mill House, her private refuge, became her sanctuary, yet the withdrawal only worsened perceptions. With Camilla largely absent from public view, speculation spiraled out of control. What was she hiding? Why wouldn't she defend herself more directly? And why had the chest been discovered in her quarters if she truly had no involvement? The more she retreated, the more the narrative solidified. She was the keeper of shadows, while William was the beacon of light. The global reaction was equally intense. International outlets ran non-stop coverage of the saga, drawing comparisons to other moments in royal history when secrecy had erupted into scandal. The monarchy's reputation, already delicate, suffered yet another blow. To many, the chest became a potent symbol of everything they feared about the institution, that behind its grandeur and ceremony lay hidden truths, waiting to burst into the open. Inside the palace, the rift between William and Camilla was now impossible to ignore. Though King Charles struggled to maintain unity, his restraint seemed weak when measured against William's decisive action. The public had already chosen their side, and in their eyes, William's choice to involve the police stood as the defining act of courage in the entire ordeal. Camilla, in contrast, appeared diminished, her role clouded by a suspicion she simply couldn't shake. Yet one undeniable fact overshadowed everything. The chest had been opened, its contents partly revealed, but not all of it was made public. Authorities, archivists, and palace officials had full access to the trove, but the public did not. And that gap, between what was known and what remained withheld, only deepened the mystery. What else had been inside? What remained undisclosed? And most crucially, what repercussions would emerge once the full truth inevitably surfaced? Because as dramatic as the discovery had been, this was far from the end of the story. In many ways, it was only the beginning. The chest had been opened, yes, but the fallout was still unfolding, and the shadows it cast over the monarchy were growing darker by the day. The chest's opening was significant, but the real turmoil began when word of it escaped the palace walls and erupted into the press. For the royal family, the discovery had been a private ordeal. For the world beyond, it became an irresistible spectacle. Within hours of the first leak, headlines dominated every front page, each more sensational than the last. "Camilla's wardrobe chest rocks the palace," declared one. "William calls police over secret discovery," blared another. And just like that, the story was no longer confined to whispered discussions within Clarence House. It had become a global sensation. Before we go any further, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. This story evolves by the day, and with every update, the stakes rise even higher. If you want to be the first to hear each twist and revelation as it unfolds, subscribing ensures you never miss a single royal development. The first wave of leaks centered on the discovery itself, the chest hidden behind Camilla's wardrobe wall, its links to Queen Elizabeth II, and William's unprecedented decision to call in the police. But then came the more tantalizing details. Murmurs that the chest contained highly sensitive documents, ledgers tracking missing heirlooms, and bundles of letters that could redefine how the monarchy was remembered. These fragments of information, whether entirely true or skillfully embellished, spread like wildfire. And once the story reached social media, there was no stopping it. Hashtags such as Camilla Chest, Wardrobe Secrets, and Royal Revelations trended worldwide, fueling a storm that the palace could no longer contain. On TikTok, creators began reenacting the dramatic moment the chest was found, some with cinematic flair, others with exaggerated humor. Memes flooded social media, depicting wardrobes leading to treasure rooms, while Instagram feeds overflowed with jokes comparing the chest to Pandora's box. Yet beneath the humor ran a sharp current of suspicion. People weren't just laughing, they were demanding answers. What had been hidden? Why had it been concealed? And why was Camilla's name at the heart of it all? For the press, this was the story of the decade. Journalists scrambled to uncover palace insiders, publishing article after article that painted an increasingly grim picture for Camilla. Every denial she issued rang hollow against the mounting tide of speculation and alleged evidence. Every public appearance was analyzed relentlessly, her posture, gestures, and even her smallest expressions dissected frame by frame. Was that nervous glance a sign of guilt? Did that uneasy smile betray knowledge she wasn't admitting? The narrative soon solidified into a dramatic clash between two figures, William and Camilla. William, who had acted swiftly by involving the police, was celebrated as the defender of transparency, the one brave enough to confront secrecy within the palace itself. Camilla, by contrast, became the embodiment of suspicion, portrayed as the keeper of shadows. It didn't matter how firmly she denied any connection to the chest. The fact it was discovered in her private quarters was enough for the public to associate her with it, fairly or not. The contrast between them couldn't have been starker. William's image soared. Commentators praised his decisiveness, his loyalty to the legacy of Elizabeth II, and his resolve to bring truth into the light. For many, this marked the moment he stepped into the role of leader, not merely heir. Camilla, meanwhile, saw her public standing collapse. Polls revealed a sharp drop in confidence, while protests outside her appearances grew increasingly hostile. Some demonstrators held placards accusing her of hoarding secrets. Others mocked her with cardboard chests and chants about hidden treasures. The palace, desperate to regain control of the narrative, launched multiple efforts to calm the storm, but every attempt only seemed to backfire. Statements about ongoing reviews and respect for historical materials were dismissed as evasions. Silence only deepened public suspicion, and Charles, caught between his wife and his son, struggled to keep the family united. His hesitation to confront the matter directly left him appearing weak, overshadowed by William's decisiveness and Camilla's mounting unpopularity. Internationally, the fallout was immense. News outlets from Europe to Asia provided nonstop coverage, often framing it as the latest blow to the monarchy's credibility. Late-night hosts joked about Camilla's secret stash, while documentary producers hurried to create exposés promising to reveal the true story behind the chest. For many audiences abroad, the discovery reinforced the perception that the royal family was not merely an institution of tradition and ceremony, but one steeped in secrecy and shadows. The chest itself took on a symbolic life of its own. It became far more than just a piece of furniture hidden behind a wall. It was viewed as a metaphor for the monarchy itself, an institution layered with mystery, concealment, and truths waiting to be uncovered. The fact that it was so closely tied to Elizabeth II only amplified its significance. For William, the matter was about preserving her legacy, ensuring that her memory remained untainted by murmurs of missing heirlooms and hidden documents. For Camilla, it became a disastrous association, her name now permanently linked to a symbol of secrecy, whether she was involved or not. Speculation about the chest's contents grew increasingly wild. Some suggested it held private diaries written by Elizabeth II herself. Others claimed it contained jewels once intended for Diana, locked away to avoid scandal. The more conspiratorial voices alleged it held proof of betrayals or long-buried family rifts. In reality, the chest contained sensitive documents and records of heirlooms, but that truth was almost eclipsed by the boundless speculation surrounding it. And in the digital age, imagination travels as swiftly as fact, often faster. The damage to Camilla's reputation was undeniable. Her public appearances grew increasingly rare, her speeches shorter, her presence more restrained. Each time she withdrew, commentators called it proof of guilt. Each time she emerged, critics accused her of being defensive. It was a no-win situation. Mill House became her refuge. Yet even there, paparazzi lingered at the gates, desperate for a glimpse of the embattled queen consort in retreat. William, meanwhile, only strengthened his position in the public eye. His decision to involve the police was hailed as bold, modern, and necessary. He was portrayed as the bridge between the monarchy's past and its future, the one unafraid to challenge secrecy and demand accountability. For many, the chest had transformed him from heir to protector, a figure already embodying the role of king in spirit, if not in title. The global fallout was relentless. Discussions expanded beyond the chest itself, sparking questions about what else might be concealed within the monarchy. Were there other secret caches in other royal residences? Could there be more chests, more documents, more hidden rooms waiting to be discovered? The mystery soon outgrew the object, creating the sense that this was only the beginning of a far larger story. And yet, amid all the speculation and sensational headlines, one truth remained unshakable. The chest had corroded public trust in the monarchy. Even unopened, it would have provoked suspicion. But opened and only partially revealed, it became the embodiment of every public fear. That secrets had been buried, that legacies had been manipulated, and that transparency came only through William's insistence. The monarchy, long protected by tradition and pageantry, now stood exposed in a way unseen for generations. The battle lines were clear. William, the champion of transparency, Camilla, the emblem of secrecy, and Charles caught helplessly between them, unable to unite the two sides. The chest had done more than unveil a collection of documents. It had redrawn the power dynamics within the royal family and reshaped how the world perceived them. But the fallout was far from over. If anything, it was only intensifying. Because as sensational as the leaks and headlines had been, there was still more to unfold, more revelations, more repercussions, and more shadows waiting to be illuminated. The Clarence House chest was meant to be nothing more than a curiosity, a forgotten relic concealed behind a wardrobe wall. Instead, it became the catalyst for one of the most profound crises the modern monarchy had ever endured. By the time the police concluded their initial cataloging, the narrative had already slipped beyond the palace's control. The damage was irreversible. The public no longer viewed the monarchy as an institution of mystique and tradition, but as one veiled in secrecy, concealment, and internal conflict. At the heart of this storm stood Camilla. Her downfall was not a sudden collapse, but a gradual erosion, a steady unraveling in the court of public opinion. Day after day, headlines chipped away at her standing. Photos of her leaving Mill House were scrutinized for any hint of anxiety, fear, or resentment. Former friends and distant acquaintances resurfaced, recounting old anecdotes that cast her in an unfavorable light. Even when nothing new emerged, the constant repetition of her name alongside the words chest, secrets, and suspicion cemented an association that became impossible to separate. What worsened her predicament was her silence. Palace advisors urged her to speak out, to make a televised address, deny any wrongdoing, reaffirm her loyalty to the late queen, and remind the nation of her years of service. But Camilla hesitated, feeling that addressing the scandal directly was beneath her dignity, convinced that time would calm the storm. Instead, time only intensified it. Each passing day of silence became further proof, in the public's eyes, that she had something to conceal. Meanwhile, William's star rose ever higher. In the aftermath of the discovery, he fully embraced transparency, briefing aides, cooperating with the police, and making public appearances where he carefully, yet firmly, reaffirmed his dedication to preserving his grandmother's legacy. He never criticized Camilla outright, but the contrast between them was unmistakable. He was open, decisive, and composed. She was evasive, defensive, and withdrawn. Polls revealed that public trust in William had soared to record highs, while support for Camilla had plummeted to near-record lows. The chest itself became the most powerful symbol of all. It was more than just wood, hinges, and parchment. To the public, it embodied generations of mistrust, a representation of the monarchy's instinct to guard its truths, conceal its scandals, and present a flawless exterior while hiding what truly lay behind closed doors. The fact that this chest had been concealed within Camilla's private quarters only deepened the feeling of betrayal. It didn't matter that she hadn't built the wall around it, nor that the chest had been sealed long before she became queen consort. Perception overpowered fact, and that perception painted her as the villain. The monarchy, long accustomed to enduring controversies, now found itself in unfamiliar territory. Unlike previous scandals, this was not about the misconduct of one individual. It wasn't about affairs, extravagance, or political missteps. It was about legacy itself. If Queen Elizabeth II's memory could be clouded by the secrets unearthed from that chest, then no royal legacy was untouchable. And if William had felt compelled to act publicly against his own stepmother to defend that legacy, it suggested that the monarchy's unity was little more than an illusion. Internationally, the story evolved from fascination to condemnation. Foreign media began publishing editorials questioning whether the British monarchy had any future at all. Across the Atlantic, documentaries aired portraying Camilla as the newest figure to unsettle the crown. Images of William, calm, resolute, and dutiful, were contrasted with clips of Camilla avoiding cameras, rushing past reporters or staring grimly from the back seat of a car. The juxtaposition was stark, and it solidified global opinion. At home, the atmosphere was equally tense. Protests outside Clarence House and Buckingham Palace grew increasingly vocal. Activist groups began tying the chess scandal to broader criticisms of the monarchy's deep-rooted lack of transparency. Campaigns calling for a more accountable crown found fresh momentum. Even moderates, those who had once dismissed Republican sentiments, began to ask difficult questions. If secrets like this could be concealed within palace walls, what else might be hidden? What did the monarchy truly represent in an age defined by transparency? For Charles, the chest proved a double blow. As king, he was expected to uphold the dignity of the institution. Instead, he found himself trapped between his son and his wife, unable to shield either. His hesitation to act decisively left him appearing uncertain, a monarch eclipsed by the stronger presence of his heir. And in the eyes of the public, his defense of Camilla looked less like loyalty and more like weakness. The chest had not only undermined Camilla, it had exposed the limits of Charles's leadership. In the months that followed, Camilla's appearances became increasingly rare. She withdrew to Mill for longer stretches, surrounded by a shrinking circle of confidants. When she did attend official events, the reception was chilly at best. Applause was polite but faint. Crowds seemed quieter, more watchful. She had become, in many respects, a ghost within the institution, a queen consort in title but not in spirit. Her authority and influence had been eroded by suspicion and silence. The legacy of the chest reached far beyond Camilla's personal decline. It reshaped how the public interacted with the monarchy. No longer were bland assurances or vague denials enough. People demanded documents, evidence, and honesty. The myth of mystique had been shattered. What remained was an institution thrust into an age of scrutiny it had long resisted. For William, this was both a triumph and a test. The chest had elevated him as a figure of integrity, but it had also set a benchmark, one by which he would forever be judged. The moment he chose to expose secrecy had become the standard against which his future leadership would be measured. If he were ever to falter in the future, if he were ever seen to conceal the truth, the public would remember this crisis and measure him by the very standard he had set himself. And for Camilla, the shadow never truly lifted. Even if she weathered the immediate storm, even if time eventually dulled the outrage, her name would forever remain entwined with that chest. In the chronicles of history, she would not be recalled as Charles's steadfast companion or the survivor of decades of controversy. She would be remembered as the queen consort, whose bedroom wall hid a chest that shook the monarchy to its very core. The Clarence House discovery may have started as a routine inspection, but it ended as a reckoning with secrecy, with legacy, and with the very foundations of trust. The chest had been opened, but in doing so, it had also unlocked something far greater: the public's demand for truth, their readiness to question, and their refusal to accept silence. The monarchy would never be quite the same again. And perhaps that was the chest's true legacy. Not the papers it held, nor the heirlooms it catalogued, but the shift it ignited in the minds of millions. A stark reminder that even behind the most polished walls, the past can never be buried forever.